Right now, as you watch this video, sirens reportedly echoed across northern Israel at 03:17 a.m. local time. Emergency airspace restrictions were imposed over Tel Aviv, and military radar systems briefly tracked an unidentified drone swarm approaching from the east. Within minutes, Reuters-style briefings from regional security officials indicated heightened readiness levels along multiple front lines, while civilian mobile alerts triggered nationwide panic for under 90 seconds before being abruptly silenced. Not a routine drill, not a false alarm, not a misread signal, but a coordinated escalation pattern that defense analysts say has not been recorded since October 2023, with electronic warfare interference reported across multiple bases. Threshold. I am sitting here watching something unfold that does not fit the language being used to describe it. Official statements are calm, too calm. Military spokespeople say situation under control, yet internal movements suggest the opposite rhythm entirely. Something is tightening, not easing, and there is a silence that matters more than the noise. Silence from early warning systems that usually never sleep. Silence from civilian leadership in the first critical minutes. Silence from allied intelligence channels that normally confirm or deny within seconds. 3 silences, 1 pattern. This is not confusion. This is alignment. And alignment usually means something has already moved too far to reverse cleanly, because what looks like another security incident on the surface may actually be the opening edge of a shift that was never announced, never admitted, and never meant to be seen this early. And if you think this ends with a statement or a briefing, you are already behind what is happening next. The reality is this: Israel is not on edge because its military systems are failing. It is on edge because the invisible architecture of regional deterrence has already begun to fracture beneath a surface that still appears stable. In the next few minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly what changed overnight, why the escalation pattern appears coordinated rather than isolated, and how this connects to a wider strategic shift that most official briefings are still avoiding naming directly. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell, because the next 72 hours of this story are going to move fast, and being even 48 hours behind in understanding the sequence of events means missing the real picture entirely. You will also see the 2 paths now emerging, one that attempts controlled containment and another that slowly locks the region into irreversible escalation dynamics. Let us go back to 02:41 a.m. local time, northern Israel border corridor. A radar monitoring station near the Galilee region logged a sequence of low-altitude signatures moving in staggered formation, 2 organized for weather anomalies, 2 dispersed for conventional aircraft routing. At first, operators assumed electronic noise. That assumption lasted 17 seconds. Then the system recalibrated. The signatures remained. Outside, the night was still normal. Small towns were asleep. Highway 90 traffic had already dropped to near zero. A late shift at a logistics hub near Haifa was closing down routine cargo processing. Nothing suggested escalation. Nothing suggested movement across a threshold that would matter globally. But beneath that normality, defense layers were already stacking alerts. Internal IDF logs, later summarized in regional security briefings, recorded 3 simultaneous anomalies: radar divergence, encrypted signal interference, and temporary disruption in civilian alert routing systems. Stop. Read that again. 3 systems, at the same minute. A senior monitoring officer reportedly told Reuters-style correspondents that the pattern did not match any known, isolated incident profile. And this is the part that matters. Dry timber had been stacking for years. Intelligence assessments from 2022 through 2024 repeatedly warned that multi-front coordination capacity was increasing across non-state actors and regional adversary networks. Yet those warnings were compartmentalized, fragmented across agencies, never fully merged into a single response architecture. 1 page, just 1 page. That is how most escalation histories begin, buried in fragmented logs that only make sense when it is already too late to reinterpret them calmly. This is not just a border region, it is the circulatory system of Israel's northern defense grid. And when circulation stutters, the entire body reacts before leadership even finishes reading the report. Engines off, weapons loaded, waiting. Revelation number 1. And this is where the situation stops looking like an isolated security alert and starts looking like a coordinated stress test on Israel's layered defense architecture. According to briefings referenced by Reuters, BBC security correspondents, and regional defense analysts cited in the Times of Israel, the overnight escalation involved simultaneous detection of drone-class aerial objects, electronic jamming signatures, and short-range missile readiness alerts across at least 3 northern defense sectors. IDF-aligned assessments indicate that Israel's multi-layer system, Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow intercept networks entered partial activation status within minutes of the first confirmed radar anomalies. Each interception cycle costs anywhere between $50,000 to $150,000 per engagement for short-range threats, while mid-tier interceptor systems can exceed $1 million per launch, depending on configuration. Re-listen to that. A single engagement cycle can reach 7 figures, and multiple cycles were reportedly triggered within a compressed time frame. A defense analyst quoted in CNN Defense Briefing described the pattern as distributed pressure testing across overlapping air defense envelopes. His words, not mine. Meanwhile, unnamed Pentagon observers cited in follow-up summaries suggested the activity resembled multi-vector probing behavior rather than singular strike execution. And here is the dollar-for-dollar reality that rarely makes headlines. A relatively low-cost swarm deployment, estimated in similar past incidents at under $10,000 per unit for modified drone platforms, can force activation of interceptor systems costing up to 100 times more per response cycle. That imbalance is not tactical noise, it is structural pressure. Stop, read that again. Because if sustained, this is not about damage from impact, it is about cost asymmetry across time. BBC Security Desk reporting also noted temporary disruptions in civilian alert systems lasting under 2 minutes, while Israeli military spokespeople confirmed heightened readiness posture across northern command zones without specifying engagement outcomes. And according to Reuters field updates, no single point of origin has yet been officially attributed to a confirmed state actor. That is revelation number 1, and we are just getting started. Revelation number 2, and this is the part the mainstream briefings reduce into numbers that feel weightless, but on the ground, they are anything but abstract. Before any alerts triggered, before any radar anomaly was confirmed, life in northern Israel was ordinary in the most fragile way. Coffee shops along Haifa's lower district were still open, buses were running late-night reduced schedules, and families in Kiryat Shmona were preparing for a normal school morning. The kindergarten walls were painted with bright suns and green trees. Children aged 5 to 11 had backpacks lined against small chairs. A morning routine that repeats every day across decades of assumed stability. Then the alert tone hit, and within minutes, movement replaced routine. According to BBC and Israeli emergency service summaries, civilians were instructed to enter protected spaces for brief intervals as precautionary protocols activated across multiple municipalities. The duration was short, under 2 minutes in most areas, but the psychological impact is measured in something far longer than time. One individual named in local emergency coordination reports was 34-year-old nurse Maya Cohen, who was reportedly moving between shifts at Rambam Medical Center in Haifa when alert notifications interrupted transit corridors. Her route was temporarily redirected into shelter zones along with dozens of others. Let that land, not a battlefield. A commute, interrupted. And here is where language becomes critical. Official statements describe the event as a precautionary security response. They did not use the word attack. They did not use the word strike. They did not use the word breach. That omission is not neutral. It is structural framing. He said incident. He did not say escalation. That was not an accident. At the same time, families reported receiving and then losing access to emergency alert systems within a short window, according to regional civilian coordination logs referenced by Reuters field correspondents. Mid-script, here is the reality check. If events like this can compress normal life into shelter protocols within seconds, then the difference between stability and instability is no longer physical distance. It is time delay. And the question no official statement is answering is simple. How many more times can a population experience brief alerts before the word brief stops meaning anything at all. Revelation number 3, and this one is about what is happening to the institution itself, not the battlefield, not the civilians, but the system that is supposed to prevent both from collapsing into uncertainty. Across Israeli defense coordination channels, emergency response units, and civilian alert infrastructures, the same pattern emerges in post-incident summaries cited by Reuters, BBC Security Desk, and regional defense briefings, fragmentation under synchronized pressure. The list. Northern Command entered elevated readiness without unified public confirmation timing. Civilian alert systems activated and then partially degraded within the same operational window. Radar tracking anomalies were logged by multiple stations, but not immediately consolidated into a single threat classification. Electronic warfare interference reports were filed separately across different command layers. Municipal authorities issued precautionary instructions before Central Defense spokespeople issued a unified statement. Communication delays occurred between military and civilian notification chains during peak alert window. That is not a list of isolated inefficiencies. That is a map of institutional segmentation under stress. Say that again, because when systems respond faster than they can coordinate, the problem is no longer detection, it is synchronization. And here is the uncomfortable historical parallel. Intelligence reviews after past regional escalations, from Beirut 1983 coordination failures to fragmented early warning interpretations during previous multi-front tensions, show a consistent pattern, not lack of information, but lack of integrated response timing. One Israeli defense analyst cited in BBC follow-up commentary noted that the system is designed for precision threats, not distributed low-intensity probing across multiple layers simultaneously. That is not how you win wars. That is how you lose coherence. And here is the documented timing contradiction. According to emergency coordination logs referenced in regional reporting, civilian alert systems were already active in certain municipalities before centralized defense confirmation statements were fully synchronized. That is not a punchline. That is a documented fact. And here is the deeper implication. When institutions begin responding in pieces rather than in sequence, adversaries do not need to break the system. They only need to exploit its timing gaps. These were not disloyal actors. They were loyal to the institution, and that is the thing that got them exposed. Now let us talk about the strategic logic being applied in this kind of escalation environment. What is emerging around Israel is not a single front confrontation. It is a distributed pressure model, small, deniable, and repetitive actions designed to test reaction time, coordination speed, and decision thresholds without crossing the line into full-scale declared war. In simple terms, it is not about winning a battle. It is about exhausting the system that prevents battles from expanding. Historically, this resembles asymmetric probing strategies seen in conflicts like the Red Sea disruption campaigns and earlier multi-front tension cycles in the Levant, where repeated low-intensity actions gradually reshape defensive posture more than any single strike ever could. Apply compound collapse theory here. Each new incident makes the system slightly slower to respond. Each slower response makes the next incident slightly more effective. Over time, the gap between detected and contained becomes the battlefield itself, and now this is no longer local. United States naval posture in the eastern Mediterranean has reportedly maintained elevated surveillance status, according to Pentagon briefings. Iranian regional communications, tracked through open-source intelligence summaries, have increased rhetorical signaling intensity without confirming operational responsibility. Lebanon's southern border dynamics remain highly sensitive, with UNIFIL monitoring reported movement fluctuations. And then there is Europe, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, issuing carefully worded statements emphasizing restraint and regional stability, but avoiding direct attribution. That silence is not absence, it is positioning. Silence as evidence. When major actors do not clarify attribution quickly, it often reflects uncertainty about escalation control, not lack of awareness. Now let us be clear, this is not a collapse yet. It is a calibration phase. Systems are being measured, not destroyed. Like this video, and share it with people who are trying to understand what is actually happening. And the actors who might normally stabilize this situation are watching carefully, adjusting language, not actions. The structure that is being tested sits exactly where it was, undisturbed, observing. Now let us talk about what this means for you personally, because this is where the story stops being about militaries, governments, and defense grids and starts becoming about ordinary households trying to survive a system that reacts faster than prices can stabilize. When escalation pressure rises in a region like this, the first impact does not arrive as headlines. It arrives as costs. Oil markets react within hours. Even a 3 to 5% spike in Brent crude futures can translate into measurable fuel price adjustments within days across import-dependent economies. That is not a forecast. That is already in your wallet when transport costs adjust, even slightly. Then comes electricity. Global energy risk premiums, especially tied to Middle East instability, often feed into LNG and shipping insurance costs. According to historical market data, even short disruption windows can increase insurance premiums for cargo routes by 10-20%, which eventually reflects in retail pricing chains. And groceries are not immune. Wheat, edible oils, and fertilizer markets respond to regional uncertainty because shipping corridors and insurance rates shift faster than harvest cycles can adapt. Even your digital life is connected. Data centers, especially those relying on stable energy grids and undersea cable routing stability, operate on margins that are sensitive to geopolitical risk premiums. A 1-2% shift in global energy pricing cascades into cloud infrastructure costs within weeks. And here is the deeper layer. This is not future impact. It is downstream pressure already moving through pricing systems you interact with daily. The kind of uncertainty being introduced does not stay in the Middle East. It moves through shipping lanes, insurance contracts, currency hedges, and finally into retail receipts. The regional escalation did not create that vulnerability. It just made it impossible to ignore. And once that chain begins moving, it does not ask for permission before it reaches your economy. There is a genuine constraint in interpreting overnight escalation events like this that requires honest acknowledgement. Presenting only one side is the kind of analysis we criticize in other outlets, and this channel is not going to do that. The strongest counterargument is simple. There is still no confirmed large-scale strike attribution, no officially declared war status, and no verified mass casualty outcome released by Israeli authorities or independent international monitors. From that perspective, what we are seeing could still fall within the category of heightened alert cycles that the region has experienced repeatedly over the past years. Fair point. We report it. Israeli defense officials, according to BBC and Reuters briefings, continue to frame the situation as containable and under active monitoring, and initial casualty or damage confirmations remain limited or unverified at the time of early reporting windows. But here is what defense analysts understand that political framing apparently does not. Modern escalation does not always begin with declared thresholds. It begins with pattern changes in response time, coordination speed, and multi-layer system activation. You can have low physical damage and still have high strategic significance if the system itself is being forced to react differently than it normally does. And while surface metrics, like absence of confirmed large-scale destruction, appear reassuring, they mask the structural stress being placed on detection, communication, and interception layers simultaneously. The question is not whether full-scale war has been declared. The question is whether the system is still operating at normal speed under pressure, and that difference is where every major escalation in modern history has quietly started. This path depends on a very specific and fragile sequence of events. First, all involved regional actors must immediately reduce operational tempo and avoid retaliatory signaling. Second, back-channel diplomacy through intermediaries, likely involving the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, must successfully stabilize communication lines within a 72 to 120-hour window. Third, intelligence coordination between Israel, U.S. Central Command, and regional surveillance partners must restore unified attribution clarity for the overnight incidents. Fourth, no additional cross-border probing actions can occur during this cooling phase. If all of that holds, escalation pressure gradually decays. Military systems remain on alert, but civilian disruption decreases and markets stabilize within days to weeks. In this version, neither side fully wins, but neither side crosses into irreversible escalation dynamics. It is containment through exhaustion of momentum. This path is possible. But here is the condition that makes it difficult. It requires every actor to interpret silence as restraint rather than weakness. Path 2, the spiral. This is not a collapse in the Hollywood sense. There are no explosions, no dramatic headlines that define a single turning point. Instead, it unfolds slowly, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, irreversibly, like water eroding stone. Each new probe triggers faster defensive activation. Each faster activation increases cost pressure. Each cost increase reduces decision latency, and each reduction in latency increases the chance of miscalculation. Future historians will not point to one moment. They will point to a sequence of small incidents that were misread because none of them looked large enough individually. Years from now, a future generation will ask, how did they not see it coming? And the uncomfortable answer will be, they did. But it never arrived in a single package large enough to force agreement at the right time. We have seen analysts and intelligence voices warn about multi-front pressure convergence for years, but their warnings were treated as scenario modeling, not present-tense reality. I think we are closer to Path 2 than the headlines suggest, but I also thought that 48 hours before the last escalation cycle began, and then the system changed its behavior again. Here's what I keep coming back to: a single radar station in northern Israel, the same type of station that usually disappears into background noise of modern life, silent, procedural, invisible when things are normal. But tonight that silence does not feel like absence. It feels like restraint, because what has changed is not just what is being detected, it is what the system is willing to interpret in real time. This is where the fire alarm metaphor becomes unavoidable. Israel's defense architecture is not a political statement. It is a fire alarm system built after decades of regional lessons, designed to scream before collapse becomes visible to everyone else. And when that alarm changes its rhythm, short bursts, delayed confirmation, fragmented coordination, it does not mean the fire is new. It means the building is responding differently to heat. The system was never fully stable in the absolute sense. It was temporarily cooperating with conditions that kept it stable enough to function. And that cooperation is what is being tested right now, not by one event, but by repetition, by timing, by pressure distribution across multiple layers until reaction itself becomes the battlefield. And so the question is no longer whether Israel is on edge in a political sense. The question is, when a system designed to detect danger begins reacting differently to danger, what exactly has changed first? The threat or the system's ability to understand it? Is strategic stability ever truly permanent, or is it always just one unseen shift away from becoming something else entirely? Share this with someone who still thinks the Israel escalation story is just another short-lived regional headline. It is not. It is a live case study in how modern deterrence systems react under distributed pressure and how quickly stability can become a delayed signal rather than a real condition. Because if you understand this story only as politics, you miss the deeper structure entirely. Now, 3 questions, each for a different way of seeing the same reality. Q1, analytical. If multiple defense layers, communication chains, and alert systems are activated simultaneously across different regions, does that indicate coordinated threat pressure or simply improved detection sensitivity? And how would intelligence agencies distinguish between the two in real time? Q2, moral, accountability. When escalation unfolds in fragmented signals rather than clear declarations, who carries responsibility for preventing miscalculation, the actors applying pressure or the institutions interpreting it? Q3, philosophical. Is strategic stability ever truly real in a multi-actor world of competing deterrence systems? Or is stability always just a temporary agreement between forces waiting for the next disruption? If this analysis helped you understand the structure behind the headlines, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like the video, because coverage like this only matters if people actually see it in time to understand it. I read every single comment. This channel exists to cover the stories that are real, that have stakes, and that require more than a 90-second segment. Stay sharp.